Hey guys, Brent Hull Build Show, 1881 in Granbury, Texas, about 30 minutes south of Fort Worth. Beautiful house, new project we're starting. Come check it out today on the Build Show. Okay guys, so we're in Granbury and this is a really interesting, cool house. Granbury's a smaller city south of Fort Worth, sleepy a little bit. It's growing and it's thriving right now. But this kind of house that might have gotten torn down in Fort Worth in a active neighborhood didn't in Granbury. And so you'll see these small little towns that, you know, grew for a little bit of time, then kind of grew sleepy. The great thing is that these kind of houses are still here and still standing. Now, it's an interesting house. We're doing some demo, some selective demo, and I've realized that this house was actually really well built. There are 2x6 studs in this house with lath and plaster interior walls that have been taken out and changed with drywall. But the fact is that this house was very well made at the time. Now, the architectural details are interesting. See the segmented arch? It's not like we have an arch over top of those windows. The moldings are actually kind of segmented around, which is kind of a feature I haven't seen before. Typically, if those were made in a mill, they would have been made kind of as an arch. And so it's kind of an interesting detail. At first I was like, is that a cheap detail or is that like a really cool detail? I still don't have the answer, but we're gonna dig into that. There was a bunch of repairs, okay, that weren't done very well. You'll see the eave lines up there where the rot's happening right over top of those little bay windows. There was balustrades over each bay and over the entry. Those aren't original, okay? Now we're gonna go back and get original documentation and dig into this thing, but the work on the outside of this building really is cleaning it up, going back to original moldings, going back to original details, and then making it beautiful again. Now, what style is this, right? If you've watched my story, I kind of gave it away, but if you haven't, notice the brackets under the eave, right? That's clearly Italianate, okay? And so this is a 1880s Italianate in Texas. Come on, let's show you inside. When you're digging into a house like this, you know, this is what I was trained to do in Boston. We don't see a ton of 1880s, 1850s houses in Texas. It really didn't start growing until the 1870s, 1880s. But you see details here. There were no real massive millwork shops in Texas. There was one in San Antonio, there was one in Waco, but I think they're actually a little bit later. So a lot of these moldings would have come on a railroad car, right? They would have come in on a train. And so you're looking at moldings and looking at details, see this little bracket, see this kind of typical shape. Those are all typical Victorian moldings. At the same time, if we look over here on these bay windows, the caps, there is a, you know, masonite or something board up there that's rotting, that's kind of falling apart. There are moldings on our little pedestals that, you know, this isn't original. I just know it because I recognize it. And then we've got, you know, rotting down there of things falling apart. So there are things that we're going to have to fix and kind of make better, but you're looking at all of these different moldings, looking for familiar shapes to try to find out the ones that are later replacements so that we can put the right wood in and get these built right. Come inside, let me show you this awesome stairway. Basically, this house was a 2-room house, right? And then there was an L put on the back side, we think fairly soon after, but it was a small house, right? You had 2 parlors downstairs, 2 bedrooms upstairs, an outside cooking kitchen, right? Later they pulled this kitchen in and kind of made it part of the deal, but you know, this was an early nice house, but certainly not a big house. This stair would have been something that was very important to them, something that would have shown their wealth, shown their ability to pay for things. It's walnut, okay? So we've got a walnut, you know, turn newel, handrail, and balusters. And these balusters have this turning and then this kind of fluted detail, this octagonal fluting detail, which is really great. It's a little bit narrow, but when you get to the top of this thing, look at that pretty little rise out of there, the really sweet sweep that comes up, and this little pencil mold on the outside that runs up. A lot of really cool details that would have shown off the wealth, right? So this would have been an entry hall. This would have been something that they would have shown off their wealth by having a stained grade balustrade like this. Something like this probably would have come in on railroad. They would have upgraded their millwork order to kind of get this kind of thing, but recognizable from that period, totally original. There are some other things that aren't as original. Come on, let me show you. Okay guys, so we're back in this L, right? We're looking at, this was converted into their kitchen, but it was really modern, kind of ugly. And so we're taking it back. We're going back to the original so we can make better decisions. Look at this, look at the framing here, okay? And this is the same kind of framing we see in the main house, but you know, this is a 2x6. And when I say a 2x6, I mean a 2x6, right? So typically framing today is nominal. 2x4 is really 1.5 by 3.5. 2x6 is 1.5 by 5.5. You know, this is, you know, rough sawn lumber that's true 2x6. You'll also notice that these little white lines, right? Our lath came here and then the plaster came through. In 1880s, in Texas, in a small town, to have plaster on your walls is kind of a big deal. It would have been a very expensive or more expensive kind of thing that they're paying for. We've got windows, okay, that, you know, are smooth on one side. You can see the rough sawn boards on the back side. This probably may have been built on site, which is pretty cool. The sash looked like they came from a mill. And, you know, I'm always talking about mortise and peg joinery, right? So here's mortise and peg joinery that's holding this sash together. And you'll see the same thing on the doors. When you're working on a house like this, you are oftentimes, you're sleuthing, right? You're trying to find, okay, when was that built? What was going on here? Let me show you one little key detail. See that little pulley right there? That pulley is a push pulley, okay? Meaning that you push it into the jamb and it kind of locks there together. If we go look at the pulleys on the front window, okay, those are actually cast pulleys that were actually screwed into the frame, right? So if this L wasn't added, you know, wasn't original, okay, it was added shortly thereafter because we've got a window that isn't really as good as the windows up front, right? And so we also have some other interesting details. We've got this beadboard here, right? Why would they put plaster on this wall and beadboard on this wall? Is this later? Is this 1890s? Is what's going on? And then if you look out here, we think we've got an old porch, but you see these studs, right? Now, here's a 2x4 stud, right? That's, you know, 1.5 by 3.5, right? As opposed to our 2x6s here. I've got original studs there. I've got, you know, new studs here. A tin ceiling that is not original, okay? So it can sometimes get confusing, like what's pulling me? And see this? You know, there's our passage into the flue. So most likely there was a cooking stove here that was flued right into your fireplace because the fireplace is right on this back wall. And when we go upstairs, you'll see that there's another flue up there. So kind of an interesting deal. We're trying to reorganize this house for our client. We're putting a kitchen over there and this will be a living room. There's this back stair here. We don't really need a back stair today, right? That was the formal front stairs. We don't really need this anymore. So there's interesting things going on here. It's hard to kind of put it together in my head, like when was this happening? What was going on? This floor was in fact built up. And if we look over here, you'll see that, you know, that floor in there is a little bit higher than this floor, okay? So that makes me think that it was added later. All these interesting things we're trying to sleuth and try to figure out. Let me show you the rest of this house. It's really awesome. In houses of this period in Texas, you would have a lot of different things happening, and that means private areas, public areas, okay? So this door here, this is a 1 3/8 interior door, 4-panel door, okay? The moldings around the outside are kind of typical Victorian moldings that would have shown up at the catalog. This base is not. That base is not typical. Typically, it would have been much more ornate. It would have had a base cap like this, right? There's just a bead on top of that. It's kind of interesting. These doors are 1-inch doors, 1 1/8, right? And so they're thinner doors for these, you know, closets, essentially is what they were. And then look at this fireplace, okay? This carries the same kind of charm that the front entry has. Notice that our, you know, pilasters, for lack of a better word, have this chamfered edge. You have that exact same thing on the front porch. And then remember I was talking about those pulleys? These pulleys, right, are screwed in place, okay, and so they're a cast pulley, right? And so look at the way these sash were made. They're a little bit bigger. The thickness of them, they're a little bit better made, right? So which makes me question that back one. And look at this. We've got a raised hearth, kind of interesting. This stone face, and to get to the outside edge is about 17 and a half inches, right? To get to the outside edge of this. Now let me show you the fireplace in there. So in this space, right? See that little line right here? right? Wonder what's going on there. That looks like an old repair. Now, just to look at this mantle, you go, wow, that's a really great mantle. This actually isn't an 1880s mantle. This looks like a 1901, late 1890s. And if I measure the face of this thing, I can see that it was brought from another job because of this gap here, right? Says it isn't really fitting very well. But also look what happens if I pull off the face of my deal. Right at about 18 inches is that line, right? And so I think there was an old fireplace here. Whatever happened to it, they changed this. So this isn't really original. Let me show you a couple other things. So there's some things that are obviously not original, right? We see this kind of lamp, not original. This door, not original. This was some, Home Depot special, right? We see the applied buttons, it's plastic. But look at the trim, right? The trim, just in first glance, you go, oh, that's kind of close. But you realize the way that they have treated this trim over here versus this is very different. And you're looking for subtle little clues of kind of where things are different and what's going on so that you can help figure out, because we're trying to put it back original. What's original, what isn't? That's kind of our job. Those are the little things you're looking for. This is my window hardware. Look at this cute hardware, right? I've got what is that? A porcelain, very decorative lock here. I've got examples of what was here, okay? But I don't have the other lock. I now can start playing around with this. And when we do a window restoration here, I can go back with that original hardware and it will really be sweet. But if you look at this window, I've got a great peg here. I've got a through tenon that's coming from this joint. I'm 99% sure these are original windows. I've got the screwed in pulleys up there. A lot of great details in this space. Let me take you upstairs. One of the things that's fun about working on historic houses is seeing the craftsmanship. Look what's going on here, guys. Remember we looked from downstairs and there's this sweet little S-curve kind of sweep things going on. But you look at from that little run up here, this gooseneck up, this twist over, and this twist around, you can actually see the hand marks of where the adze and where the planes and everything else came together to kind of make this handrail and make this cap. And these little notches in here, I believe, are the craftsman as he's kind of working out these sweeps and shapes and stuff to get this to work together, because this thing is not available in a catalog, right? That little turn has to be made on site. So they would have taken a block of wood, they would have planed it, adzed it, moved it around so that it could match these shapes. Really a fun thing. Now come look at this. In here, we have more questions than answers, right? We have back to this kind of the wide plank beadboard. It's a very thin beadboard. It's 5 inches wide, but look at this line right here, okay? It comes over here, it jogs this way. What was going on? Was there another window that kind of would balance that out? But then they left this open. Was there something in there? Kind of a question mark of what's going on. We look at our floors. The floorboards run this way and now they run this way. They look like they're about the same width. It's longleaf pine. Then we've got a new wall. Remember, this is the beadboard wall that was in the kitchen. So we're trying to figure out when this was here. And then you look at this window and this door that goes out into this porch, and we've got some original hardware. This kind of shape is very appropriate to the 1880s. And there I was telling you about my flue before, that this would have been maybe where a heater went, maybe where a stove went. There really wasn't insulation in these walls. So I'm gonna show you one more thing downstairs and then we'll get back to demoing and rebuilding this house. So if we're trying to figure out what's original, what isn't, right? We've got these Victorian-esque type of turnings. Not a very ornate one, certainly coming up much higher than a Victorian rail would have been. It would have been down here. So this kind of thing makes me realize it's new. Look what's going on in our ceiling. We've got 4x8 sheets of faux wood going on there. We know that's not original, but back here, we're back to our siding. We see this shutter that we know that was covered up. Remember, this is our Home Depot door that was added. So this whole back porch where we're gonna put her kitchen is gonna be coming out as we try to, reconfigure this. All of this stuff on the outside of the house is not original, and so we can get rid of it. Let me show you one problem we're dealing with, which is on the outside here. The way this house was constructed with the 2x6s, it was set down on a large timber, like this big. And so we've exposed this corner right here, and you can kind of see the construction methods and the kind of rot that we're dealing with. Basically, my studs are coming down here, right? There's an original stud. There's a 2x6 stud. Here's some siding that was rotted. We've just opened this up, but we were getting, you know, you can see where they did this kind of lousy repair later. But look at this timber, all right? This timber is a 6x6, which is a large timber. And that's the way they used to frame. They would frame with the large timber at the base, sitting on sometimes a rock foundation, and then they would do their studs up above. Sometimes you'll see these cut into a pocket, which is not what these are. But look at all my rot, right? Look at all, this is still wet back in here. And I'm just, you know, I don't have timbers anymore. I have dust. And so we're gonna have to dig into this and kind of repair some of the structural things. But our clues are any kind of, this kind of faux paint that was covered up for it later gives us clues to what's original and what isn't. I've got some loose boards here we're probably going to have to replace. Not a tremendous amount of repair, but certainly repairs that we're going to have to make as much work as we're putting on the inside. Okay guys, 1881 Texas, fun new project we're starting on. A lot of sleuthing, a lot of trying to figure out where things are made. Understanding the past, like appreciating the great craftsmanship here, the great design, yet also realizing we've got to, you know, upgrade some of the work that's been done over the last, you know, 140 years to get this house back to where it should be. A lot of great bones here, a lot of great stuff. Keep following us on Instagram and Facebook, Hull Millwork, Hull Homes. Sign up for the newsletter, and if you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Should be a lot of fun. I'm Brent Hull. Thanks for watching.